in special partnership with and brought to you by our friends at FLYN. Today at Soulfront, I have Rebecca Rodskog, who is a consultant in business strategy and transformation. She's a co-founder of FLYN, and what her business looks at is transforming existing organizations and helping them becoming thriving cultures, market-leading cultures. The topic we explore today is the distributed workforce, and we're all experiencing the distributed workforce in one form or the other. And how do we get through that? But on the other side of it, how do we have a thriving organization that has integrated distributed workforces? So it's an interesting topic. And without further ado, let's get into the show. Becky, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is going to be a ton of fun. We have worked together in different spaces, or I've come to learn about your consulting company, Future Leader Now. I'm so impressed with it. I think it's the best. I would highly recommend it for anyone looking for transformation or trying to change their business. So kudos to you. Today, what I want to do is I want to go into a number of different things. One is your passion for smiles at work. And I think that is, it's so important. And it's a lot deeper than I think, than people would understand just by saying it right there. So what we're going to talk about is the idea of how do you keep that cultural positivity, no matter what business that you're working in. But one of the things I have from your website is that you are a self-described workplace crusader, and that's helping organizations transform outdated practices to market-leading cultures. Can you just tell me what that means to you?
Yeah, so it's funny. So workplace crusader, I thought it was like when I would be talking to people about my work, I was like, I just get so passionate about it. I'm like, the work shouldn't suck. That's another thing that I talk about all the time. That's the name of my book that's coming out. It's like, work shouldn't suck. And people are like, yeah, it shouldn't. It needs to be better. And so when I talk about, transforming outdated practices, it's like, why is it so hard? Why are we up against so many barriers at work in order to do our best work and in order to thrive? And that's when we say bringing smiles to work. It's like, when people are thriving, when they're doing their best work, even if it's hard, they're enjoying it. They're smiling. They're actually engaged in the work. So this isn't about like, make everybody happy. This is about how do we help people actually do their best work, right? And so that's when we're talking about transforming outdated practices, it's like, we've got all this junk, all this stuff that like people have to wade through that frankly doesn't make sense in a lot of times in a lot of places. And it's like, why do we do that to ourselves, right? But we created this for ourselves. Like, it's not like some alien came in and like, said, you must work this way. So it's about really looking at and using like techniques like design thinking and, and innovation, and saying like, well, what is it we're trying to do here, and how and why, and how can we transform those outdated practices in order to help people do their best work and to thrive.
Right. Now, one thing, Becky, that I think is really top of mind for everyone, and something that you're kind of knees deep in right now, is the distributed workforce and in what that is in terms of transformation. Now, I've got kind of an article from the New York Times that goes into, the office for the foreseeable future is dead. We can debate that, but it says Google and Facebook are telling employees that they can work remotely until 2021. Twitter is allowing basically employees indefinitely to work from home. Mm-hmm. So, is it ever going to be the same? And I want to get into, like, I guess a very obvious question, but a question that's really important right now. And that's like, why is like transformation towards a distributed workforce so important for long-term success for businesses? Why do they need to start really diving deep into the subject?
Okay, there was a couple questions there. So is the workplace ever going to be the same as the first one? And I think we can, across the board, say no. We know this to be true. anybody who is thinking that they're going to re-enter their workplace and it's going to be the same as it was, 9 weeks ago for the US or wherever your timeline is as far as like shelter in place and returning, they're really in denial. Like they're in full on denial. My background's in change management and they are just sitting there going, it'll be fine. Like we're just gonna like wait it out. And like, then we'll just go back to normal like that. It's not going to. And the reason for that goes into the second question, which is why it's so important to transform into the distributed workforce mentality at some level. So we've been seeing these trends year after year after year of, the need to move to a more flexible workforce. The gig economy has been pushing this. The need for flexibility from a work from home, schedule standpoint. The need for diversity in your workforce is driving a need to be able to get workers from all over the globe and in places like not around hubs. So I mean, you even look at the biggies like a Google, they struggle to hire the amount of people that they need to hire if they have to hire it in specific locations, right? I'm in the Bay Area, and the war for talent in the Bay Area is, ridiculous. Like it is, it's even in times where the economy goes, we still have in these core hubs of physical hubs, a serious need to find talent elsewhere, not just to fill gaps, but also from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, and then inclusion's on the other side of that when you think about how do you include those diverse forces. So all these forces were at play already. We've been seeing these human capital trends happening year after year after year. So I would say across the board, most companies, unless they are very physically oriented organization, like they do physical construction work in a region or something like that, most companies have already been looking at, especially in the knowledge worker category, how do we do this and how do we do it successfully, and maybe had it on their digital transformation strategy plan, and we're starting to experiment. Like we talked with a team at Samsung Next, who has been experimenting for the last 2 years on a fully distributed team that, how do we do that? How do we work across the globe? We've got some companies that are already fully distributed, like a company like Amiro, which actually has a collaborative software that you can use in a distributed environment. So it makes sense that they also would practice working in distributed environments. So they're completely distributed, but we weren't seeing it across the board for a lot of reasons, right? A lot of barriers, whether they were perceived barriers or real, but the need for it was already there, right? Like there was a constant pressure, because both a push and pull pressure, like where the workforce is, and then what we need in the workforce as well. That was happening. That was like this, we have to figure this out. And then overnight we were forced to figure it out. Right. So with the shelter in place orders going across the globe. So I think that answers.
I think that like there's a lot of traditional ideas of why it's important. Like if you went to your leader, you went to your manager, they'd say, well, hey, it increases retention or reduces attrition, or, this is an ask to work from home from millennials or even baby boomers.
Right.
Like all these traditional types of reasons why it's important. But, another one is like, how does it, how do you manage to retain kind of what your business was like and inject this distributed workforce where you might not have had it in the past? Like, where are companies right now? Like, I think that you are experiencing just with consulting work that you're doing, where you have businesses and they're probably just running like furiously trying to figure out like, how the heck do I do this?
Yeah.
What are their biggest whys?
So it's so funny because it's when you were just mentioning the benefits of a distributed workforce, and it almost sounded like nice to have. Right? Like, it's like, oh, well, that would be nice if we could give that flexibility to people. They can work from home a couple of days a week, or, it creates engagement because they feel like, I'm not micromanaging them and I can get my work done on my time and what, I don't know, like those sounded like the nice to have. There certainly were some must haves even before this happened, right? Like there certainly were some absolute needs in order to have a distributed work. I mean, if we look at sales organizations, they've always known how to work distributed, right? Because we had to have them work distributed because they had to be in the areas in which they served, right? Especially if it was like physical, again, visits and needing to be out there. So it's interesting because when we've had this like very clear case of like, a need to be distributed, it was like no problem, right? Like that. But then when it wasn't a clear case, it was like, well, like, why would I do that? Like, I can't, it makes it really hard for me to manage my people. I can't see the work that they're getting done. Like, we have to be able to connect, in person. And while a lot of those things are valid, you're not necessarily unable to do those things when you're distributed. So I think the why distributed, it gets down to like a core thing about, how people, there's two things, what's the actual role of an office, of a physical workplace? Why would people need to come in on any level? And then what is the role of like being able to, like, what are the benefits of working from home or working, not at a physical workspace where you all come together, because it's not always going to be home, right? It might be some other kind of hub or setup or cafe or WeWork or whatever, right? In the future, what are the benefits of that, and how can we enable that? So one of the things that we're seeing that's super interesting is what is bubbling up as a big benefit of everyone being at home. Which I think most people were like, well, it's not going to be anybody. It's going to be really hard. It's like, but we're seeing a couple things bubble up, which is kind of giving some proof points. And we see that some things that were worries or things that people thought, well, there's no way we'll be able to do that if everybody's working from home, are getting negated, right? So the benefits that are bubbling up are things like diversity, are things like inclusion. People feel like now that we're all working from home, like there's a huge
separation
ability to be included. You're not like the one person that's at home and you can't put your hand up because everybody else is in the room. It reminds me of that Hamilton song, In the Room Where It Happens, if you're not in the room, you're totally left out, right? So this has flattened the playing field for many people. They feel like they have a voice. They feel like I'm seen, I'm heard. It also, from an inclusion standpoint and an empathy standpoint, we're all in our homes. We all got all this stuff going on. It's actually opening up our ability to be empathetic. I think just before we got on our call, you were dealing with like the neighborhood kids outside and playing hockey and like, can you move it down the street? Like, those are things that we used to have to hide before, because we didn't want to seem unprofessional. So now it's like, whatever, like I'm lucky to be showered. I'm lucky to have my background of this part of my house cleaned up enough that I'm not totally embarrassed, right? Like, so I think that there's these real positive benefits that are happening. It's creating more empathetic culture. You can get access to talent everywhere and anywhere. So from a team building standpoint, like you can get those skills. I'll get like a really small example of that. One of my really good friends is a vice president of development for Penn State. And he sometimes has a really hard time hiring because if he hires, one person that's married, that you're bringing them to a marketplace that, frankly, may not have a lot of jobs available. There's not a lot of other industry there. So like, what does the spouse do for work? What is, and it creates a huge barrier. Can you imagine if like none of those physical barriers were there, if we were all working, which they are, by the way, distributed, now I can hire the best talent for the job wherever, right? So there's these benefits that are happening. And then that's other side, which is negating the things of like, well, how can I stay connected? Well, how can I, how will I know what the work they're doing? How, all of those things, like depending on the leader and the teams and the people, like that stuff is just going out the window. They're like, yeah, not only are people just as productive, in some cases we're seeing higher productivity because people are communicating more with their teams, because they're, working together even harder because they have to. So it's so interesting to see
all the different sides of it.
Yeah.
But the other part of it, Becky, is just right now we seem to be in a stage where it's keep the lights on.
Oh God, yeah.
And like, I mean, if you look at Zoom, for instance, like I heard that the net cap on their business is like all the 7 airlines all put together. It's like $48 billion or something. Just it's
It's
insane.
mind-boggling, right?
So
Why did I not buy?
why did I not buy Zoom? But if you ask them what their number one, innovation or concern is right now, they'll go back and they'll say, oh, it's by far just security.
Yeah.
We need to keep this thing secure so we can manage the users.
By the way, I just got my new Zoom update. Did you download yours? Because it's mandatory. And it's all about that, right? It's all about the security, right?
But on the other side of it, it's going to be, something different, because it's not going to be
Completely.
good enough just to, just
Check the
to
boxes.
have what we have as a distributed workplace. Like, we're going to get back to work in some type of form or shape. We don't know. So when you think of the what, like what do we do differently going forward? What are clients talking to you about? Like, what do we need to start thinking about in terms of that new distributed workforce?
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting because Zoom is an interesting case, because I love that you brought them up, because obviously they are, if anyone is having like the highest amount of pressure to perform right now in the midst of all this, like they are a great example of that. There's plenty of other companies as well. And then also on the other side of that, you look at companies that are just trying to keep their businesses alive because the focus isn't on whatever service or products they provide. But what's interesting about Zoom is, if you back up pre-pandemic, their focus has always been on actually, I think their tagline is like working happy, right? So they actually are very aligned when it comes to like, look, at the end of the day, like, we're trying to create, a workplace for our own people and for others that's about, that makes things easy. Like, you should be like happy, easy to click on the one button to join a Zoom meeting. And like, it's simple, easy. And it makes you happy. Like, it literally and frankly, I like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was an early adopter of Zoom. And I swear I'm not getting paid for this endorsement, but like, I remember my first Zoom meeting and I literally smiled. Like, I was like, what? That worked so easily. Like, and from that moment on, I was like, why would anybody use anything else than Zoom? And so if you think back to like the alignment of like what they're about and how they do it with their purpose, which is around working happy, or however that, I don't know if I'm getting the words exactly right, but it's on all their billboards and everything. Like, it just makes sense, right? Like, their strategy is about creating video conferencing that is so easy to use and simple that it doesn't get in the way. Like, it's the opposite. It actually like creates connection and creates happiness, and like, so and so here they are, like, obviously top of mind is security, because like, if stuff's not secure, they can't use their stuff, which goes totally against their strategy, which is around working happy and everything else. So they've had core alignment up and down since day one. So what I would say is, back to your question, when you're saying like, what should people be, obviously we're working on keeping the lights on right now. If you're a company that was already like aligned around that, like, how does my culture, and how I define culture as like how things get done, right? Like, that is, you know what a culture is when you witness how things get done, right? Like, if your culture is already aligned around your strategy, then what you're doing today and what you're doing tomorrow, you're still going to be focused on the right things, right? Because you're still going to be focused on, what do I need to do in order to get to that purpose? Which is, my strategy is aligned, my culture is aligned, it's good. And that's why Zoom is doing what it's doing, because it knows if it doesn't take care of security, they're out the window. So when I think about other companies that maybe didn't have alignment, that literally they're just like checking the boxes, it's going to become so much more important for them when they're looking about reentry and beyond, to be like, okay, hold on, let's back up. Like, what are we doing? What we're doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? Like, as a business, and then the what and the how come out of that, back to the Simon Sinek golden circle, right? Like, so why are we doing what we're doing? Okay, fine. We got everybody set up at home. Like, good. Check the boxes, like, got enough bandwidth, got people have their computers, they have their things. Where, okay, like, taking a breath and saying, like, as I look at the future, knowing that it's going to change, let's back up and make sure we're aligned on why we're doing what we're doing as a business. And then the what we're going to do to do that, and then the how we're going to do it, are, could look very different. And that's what we need to focus on, is answering those questions.
I think, yeah, definitely. Like, I think getting back to the core of the story is one part of it. Another part of it too, though, is addressing our fears. And I think a big part of what people have kind of, haven't dug into is, people didn't choose distributed workforces. We are dragged kicking and screaming like into distributed workforces, and Zoom downloads went exponentially high because people had no other choice. They had no other choice. Now, there were problems that were always there with distributed workforces, and I think now we've embraced them. I still don't know if companies have figured out like what was the problem to begin with. Why didn't we
why didn't we do this before?
Yeah,
right?
Why didn't we?
Well, and they're going to need to answer that question to their employees, especially if they expect them to come back into the workplace, right? So I look at this as like a hierarchy of needs, right? Just to get, and I mentioned this a little bit before of like, what's the purpose of the office? But like at the bottom level, it's like, what do I fundamentally need to get my job done, right? And I think we thought that the office played a much bigger role in that before. And I think that is some of the perceived barriers of, why we haven't done this before, right? It's because we thought, in order to get my job done, basic needs, I got to be in the office, right? Now we're like, oh, not true for a lot of people, right? Like, so then we have to say like, okay, so what are those basic needs that aren't getting met in the office? And frankly, if there are no basic needs that aren't getting met, then we've really got to think about this, because then why would an employee want to come back to the office ever? I'm going to go work for Twitter. Unless one of those basic needs is connection, which we are seeing. And you're going to have a lot of people that, have said, I'm good. I like working from home. Like, I never want to go back into the office, especially given a pandemic. But there are people, I know I could speak for, and I'm a consultant and I don't even have an actual office, but like my need to actually see people in person is very high. Like, and I need to connect, and there's things that like, yeah, I can do that from home. Yeah, I can do that over video, but like it goes so much faster and quicker if I'm in the office, and it creates another layer of connection and collaboration that I could never have gotten to. So really understanding the why, what are the actual, use cases, if you will, for the office? Like, why would I want to, and then create solutions around that. Like, so getting back to design thinking, like what are we trying to solve for here with an office, right? Like, what is the actual need? And then let's create solutions around that. So if the need is basic technology access, right? Like, yeah, I can get some of the stuff at home, but like, actually I can do my job so much better and so much clearer. Like, and that's why you have essential workers. The data centers are up and running. They can't do that at home, right? Like there's pieces that like, baseline, I've got to be in the office to access technology in order to do my job. Great. Maybe it's like a collaboration need where there's actually no way to collaborate in the way that I need to collaborate unless I'm in the office. Maybe it's connection need. I need to like get to know my coworkers at another level. And, these are like-minded people, and it helps me align, around our purpose and what we're trying to do here. And
we even joked about the idea of, I think it was around 3 to 5% of large organizations, they have people in serious relationships.
Yep, one of my best friends, she works for the government. I'm not going to say who it is or where it is, but like she just, thankfully before the pandemic happened, they met at work too. They, don't work. But again, I think there's something about, if you're clear on your purpose in your organization and it attracts like-minded people, of course you're going to find like your best friends there. You're going to find, and like-minded, I don't mean like not diverse. I just mean like people that are passionate about the same stuff you're passionate about. Like we're all working in this little niche. We're all working on like, and then why wouldn't naturally that fall out of it, that you would find relationships in those circumstances. So yeah, I love that benefit of the office. I don't think that's something that like most corporations would put on their why do you need you to come back to the office, because you might meet your future mate, but but connection, 100%. So but it's not to say that we can't still stay connected in a distributed environment, but there is a role for the physical workplace to play in creating that. So getting back to your original question, it's like, why didn't we do this before? I think there was perceived barriers. I think we were articulating the role of the workplace. Maybe we had it like 50% right, but like, we kind of assumed a lot of things of like why the workplace was important. I'll throw things out there like, well, how am I going to know that my people are getting their work done if I can't like stop by their desk and like check in with them? And, how am I going to actually work on a problem with somebody if I can't be in a conference room with them? Like, I think we had, a list of things that some were fear-based, some are just old models that we just can't break out of without clear guidance on how to move forward. So
yeah. I think that, and we chatted about this, the idea of, there are real barriers, but there's also perceived barriers. Like, so things that you've just realized that, it wasn't even a thing. You can actually work like this and it's okay.
Yeah. But I think because we were forced to break through that, first of all, I think we're just scrambling and it's stressful and it's not sustainable. So that's one or three things. But also, I think that we had, it's creativity, right? It comes like you had to make it happen. And I think that, people's ability to have creative solutions around this and to just like make things stand up and make it work and kind of hit the, like has been enormous. And I mean, I've seen, things happen overnight that would have taken 2 years for a company to implement. So but I will say not sustainable, right? So we do have to look forward and say, okay, like
let's take a step back.
We've got the dam stopped, right? Like, but like this didn't solve we put the Band-Aid on or whatever, like, but this didn't solve us for the future.
There was a good article that you mentioned on American Express.
Yeah.
How they got into just what leaders are going to need to do to kind of get through this. And I just want to bring up a Dan Pink quote that I think ties into this idea that you can discuss with the article. It's human beings have an innate inner drive to be autonomous, self-determined, and connected to one another. And when that drive is liberated, people achieve more and live richer lives. So can you kind of go into that article, what the leader in American Express was trying to say leaders should think about as we move towards a new distributed workforce?
Yeah, so it wasn't, it was his letter to the employees. And so it was basically a model of what we're seeing strong leaders do and take. And one is a deep empathy for people today. And that's the other, like, another silver lining of all this, that we're seeing people be able to be much more empathetic about diverse situations and just everything, like the situation we're in, right? Like we're all in this together in so many ways, right? And never in my history have I ever been in something that like we can all relate to, but also understand that everybody's situation is very different, right? Like, I mean, you've got people that are single, you've got people that have family and taking care of elderly, you've got people that are sick or not sick, like you've got people that, like their businesses are 100% shut down right now or whatnot. So I think like there's a couple of things. So the Amex leader, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name right now. I don't have the article in front of me, but his leadership in communicating and being as transparent as possible, you know, and also acknowledging the situation we're all in and giving as much information as he could. I mean, that in and of itself, like, instead of like hiding and waiting till it's all fixed or all right or all perfect, or, you know, I've checked all the boxes and I'm not going to break any laws or whatever, just being really open and honest about like, here's where we are, here's what we haven't figured out, we acknowledge the situation is really hard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think so that's one thing. Getting back to the Dan Pink thing, you know, that empathy allows you to think the way that Dan Pink is thinking, which is about, you know, what really motivates people to do their work. So, you know, when I think about, and it's, by the way, it's there, these pillars are true for everybody, but every individual person that will manifest differently, right? So, so the pillars that Dan talks about are, first of all, autonomy. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. I need to be able to, like, you know, I mean, you know, when somebody like takes over your mouse and like tries to do things on your computer, like how like frustrating it is. Like, it's like that on like 80 million levels, right? It's just like, like I can do it, you know? And if you think about kids and when they're learning how to tie their shoes, right? And you try to help them and they're like, I can do it. Like it's just so in us to be able to do it ourselves with guidance, right? So, you know, got a whole generation of millennials that want coaching and coaching and coaching, but they do not want you to tell them what to do. Right. So that is like an innate need, is that autonomy. And then the second pillar is, I should have started with this one, but purpose. And it's like aligning around, what are we even trying to do here? What's our why? Like, why am I getting up at 6 a.m. to crank this spreadsheet out? Because honestly, like, I'd really rather not do it if you don't have a good reason for it. Right. So, you know, I think it's funny, like I can be doing something that's really hard. I'm working on a project right now where I am literally helping this company organize around reentry into their physical workplaces. And some of the stuff that we're working on is really hard and not fun. And it's, you know, but I'm still getting up every day excited about it because I know it's important and I know the why behind it. Right. So that's super interesting. That's the purpose. And then the third piece he talks about is mastery. Like, everybody wants to be learning. Like, we didn't come out as babies. I love this example. I'm like, decide like, nah, I don't need to learn how to walk. It's fine. Like, like we just, again, innately want to continue to grow and develop and learn. And so when we look at the distributed workforce, having that empathy that like Amex's leader was showing and being able to apply it and say like, okay, given these pillars, like that doesn't go away because they're working from home now. Like, it's even that much more important. So how do I make sure that people can still be autonomous? You know, because they'll probably desire to micromanage so much more because I can't see you, right? So how do I create a way in which I can still have people be autonomous and get the work done and drive the work, right? How do I align them with the purpose of the organization now that they can't see it and feel it in the hallways and walk around and hear, you know, like, what do we need to do? We need to have strong leaders getting the word out there, talking all the time about what we're doing and why, you know, and then the managers need to be doing the same thing. And then the individuals need to be putting their hands up and saying, this is what I'm doing to contribute. You know, that alignment is so much more important because otherwise people are just going to be like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm out. Right. And then the mastery piece, you know, right now we are in this emergency thing, but it's gonna shift, and we're gonna get into a little bit of like, it's not gonna be business as usual for a while, but it won't be this panicky, hopefully. So like, we're gonna still need to think about like, how do I give people challenges? How do I give them things that they need to develop on? Because that will keep them engaged and want to grow as long as they're aligned to the purpose and feeling like they can do it. They have some autonomy around it.
I think the thing is like what you went into there, and I think that that's something that everyone is craving right now, is I want to be my old self. I want to be my old self again. What's happened? Like, I'm not me anymore. But
I do think we really have to be empathetic because there are plenty of people who are loving this, are absolutely loving this. And it's given them the autonomy. It's given them the ability to have a voice. It's given them new challenges, because now I've got to like do, like, this is actually like done wonders for engagement on some levels. And then you've got people who are dying. They're like, I hate working this way. My team isn't, they're like, I need to like, so it's interesting. And then everything in between, right? So we have to understand that like, not everybody's jonesing to get back into the workplace. Pandemic aside, like health issues aside, and then you layer in like, I don't feel safe, like you're going to make me come back. Well, what if I don't want to come back because I feel like it's not going to be safe, or I'm really enjoying this time with my kids, or by the way, my kids haven't gone back to school yet. So like, what are you going to do about that? Like, there's all these layers that like, if we can't have that empathy and then understand what truly motivates people at work, like they're not going to just come back just because you told them to. No. Right.
And I think it's, we want to change it from, I want to be my old self, to get people in a place where they say, I want to be my new self. And I think that's, it's going to happen, but it's going to take empathetic leaders like you talked about. It's going to take the motivation and the autonomy and the feeling that you're okay to make it work. Becky, one thing I want to end this on, and I've really enjoyed this conversation, is I'm going to ask you something. I'd just like you to finish the thought. And there's something about distributed workforces and connection.
Yeah, this is the thing. I actually just got chills. Humans need to be connected. Like, we are in some ways feeling more connected because we're all in this together, but but it's a kind of a point in time thing. And if we continue to have this distributed workforce, the thing that we need to put in place in both formal and informal ways as organizations is, how do we continue to keep people connected and aligned to what we're trying to do here? From an organizational standpoint, but also from just a deep human need standpoint. I mean, I literally, it's crazy. The last few weeks, and I'm sure you've experienced the same, I'm more connected to my family because we're having weekly Zoom calls. I'm more connected to my friend circle, who I thought I was like so connected to, like, but now like I'm invited to virtual baby showers that I wouldn't have been able to go to in the past because it was happening at someone's home across the country. Mm-hmm. And now I'm invited because nobody can come over, so everybody can come, right? So like, I've gotten calls from people I literally haven't heard from in 20 years. I'm not kidding. I literally got one 2 days ago from my old guitar teacher. And I was like, what? Like, and it's because we all are so craving, like when we're so busy and we're going to the workplace and we're seeing all these people and it's kind of like ding, 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 like we're kind of getting our connection fill. So on some levels, but on other levels, what were we missing out on, right? Like, we're missing out on time at home with our families. We're missing out, like I'm having daily walks with my families. I'm making dinner for my kids, which by the way, I hate making dinner normally. And now I love it because I'm like planning it with the kids and we're cooking it together. And it's like this activity we have. Like, connection is like, if you follow that thread, I think we're going to be okay. Right? If we follow the thread of like, how can we stay connected and build on that in healthy ways? I think, there's a real thing called Zoom fatigue. It's real. There's other things like, but if we can find our rhythm and find what works for people, again, using that empathy, understanding where people are and meeting them there and knowing that this is a basic human need, I think we're going to be okay.
Becky, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate your time. And
thank you for doing this. And I'm so happy to partner with you on it in general. It's just such a great thing to be providing for people.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Thank you for your support. Please remember to click subscribe so we can bring you more remarkable interviews with extraordinary leaders.